A young Marine sits alone in a military courtroom, surrounded by senior officers who watch her like she doesn't belong. The general presiding over her hearing leans forward with a smirk and asks a question meant to humiliate her in front of everyone. "What's your kill count?" The room goes silent. Why? Pasted. Convert the following transcript into proper paragraph form. You must not delete, change, or skip any words or sentences. Not even a single word should be missing. Only adjust the formatting, punctuation, and structure. Strictly ensure correct punctuation throughout, including but not limited to full stops, periods, commas, question marks, exclamation marks, colons, semicolons, apostrophes, and quotation marks, wherever necessary. Correct any missing or incorrect punctuation based on the flow of sentences. White heavy checkmark. Do not add any headings, keep the original flow intact. Only improve the formatting, structure, punctuation, and flow, without altering or shortening the original content in any way. 1:59 p.m. A young Marine sits alone in a military courtroom, surrounded by senior officers who watch her like she doesn't belong. The general presiding over her hearing leans forward with a smirk and asks a question meant to humiliate her in front of everyone. "What's your kill count?" The room goes silent, waiting for her to break. But when she finally answers, her response doesn't just shock the room, it stops it completely. From which city in the world are you watching this video today? If you enjoy stories of quiet strength and hidden sacrifice, consider subscribing, because what happens next will rewrite everything you think you know about respect, authority, and the warriors no one is allowed to remember. The fluorescent lights hum overhead in a windowless room deep inside Naval Station Norfolk. The walls are navy gray, sterile, and cold, designed to remind everyone who enters that this is a place of judgment. 3 cameras mounted in the corners record silently, red lights blinking in steady rhythm. At the center of the room sits a single metal table, and behind it, alone, sits Staff Sergeant Bryn Solis. Her uniform is spotless. Her posture is upright, but not rigid. Her hands rest flat on the surface of the table, fingers spread evenly. She doesn't fidget. She doesn't look around. Her face is calm, unreadable, like someone who has learned to disappear while remaining completely visible. Around her, arranged in a horseshoe formation, 23 senior officers fill the tiered seating, Navy admirals in crisp whites, Marine colonels with rows of ribbons spanning their chests, JAG lawyers flipping through thick folders marked with red, classified, stamps. Some lean back in their chairs with arms crossed. Others whisper to each other, low voices carrying across the room like static. A few glance at Bryn with expressions that range from boredom to thinly veiled contempt. The room feels less like a hearing and more like a trap. At the head of the room, elevated behind an imposing oak bench, sits Lieutenant General Merrick Caldwell. He is 58 years old, a Marine legend with 3 rows of ribbons and silver hair combed back in a style that hasn't changed in decades. His face is carved from granite, sharp angles and hard lines that seem incapable of softening. When he speaks, people listen. When he gives an order, people obey. He radiates authority like heat from a furnace. And right now, that authority is focused entirely on the woman sitting alone below him. The charges against Bryn are vague: conduct unbecoming, insubordination, failure to follow operational protocol. The words are bureaucratic and shapeless, designed to mean everything and nothing at once. The proceeding has been underway for 40 minutes, but Bryn has only been asked procedural questions: name, rank, unit. She answers each in a flat, neutral tone that gives nothing away. Staff Sergeant Bryn Solis. 3rd Marine Expeditionary Force. Forward reconnaissance. Her voice is steady, controlled, like someone reading coordinates over a radio. Caldwell flips through her file without looking at her. The pages turn slowly, deliberately. Each motion a performance for the room. He pauses on one page, his jaw tightening as he reads something that clearly irritates him. Then he closes the folder sharply, the sound echoing off the walls like a gavel strike. He doesn't look at her, just the paper, just the words on a page that tell him everything he thinks he needs to know. He leans forward, elbows on the bench, fingers steepled. His voice is calm, but edged with condescension. "Marine, your record is inconsistent. 3 commendations, 2 formal reprimands, multiple operational deployments, but almost no mission reports attached to your jacket. How do you explain that?" The question hangs in the air, heavy and accusatory. Bryn doesn't hesitate. "I don't, sir." Caldwell's eyes narrow. "You don't?" "No, sir." The room shifts. Officers exchange glances. Someone coughs. The atmosphere thickens. Caldwell stands now, slowly, letting the weight of his rank fill the space. He moves around the bench and down the steps, closing the distance between himself and the table where Bryn sits. "You were deployed to the South China Sea in 2023. Care to elaborate?" "No, sir." "Persian Gulf, 2024. "No, sir." He stops a few feet from her table, arms crossed, towering over her like a statue of judgment. "Do you think silence makes you mysterious, Marine, or just difficult?" Bryn doesn't react. Her expression doesn't change. Her hands remain flat on the table. She doesn't blink. Caldwell begins to pace, his voice rising with each word. "You know what I think, Solace. I think you've been coasting, hiding behind classifications, using bureaucracy as a shield so no one can ask what you actually did during your deployments." He stops directly in front of her table, leaning down so his face is level with hers. "I've seen Marines like you before. All mystique, no substance. You get one lucky assignment, ride it for years, and hope no one digs too deep." To everyone's surprise, Freya performed exceptionally well at land navigation, returning with all points located well within the time limit. Her route selections showed an unusual efficiency, not the most direct paths, but the most energy-conserving ones, avoiding unnecessary elevation changes while maintaining concealment. "Military intelligence background?" Zane asked as she turned in her scorecard. "No, sir." "Combat search and rescue?" Zane's eyebrows lifted slightly, but he asked nothing more. When a fierce storm hit during overnight field exercises, the candidates were scattered across their patrol bases with minimal equipment. Temperature dropped rapidly as rain turned to sleet, soaking through uniforms and creating miserable conditions. In Freya's patrol base, she quietly constructed a more effective shelter than the standard hasty setup others employed, using terrain features and natural materials to create better insulation and drainage. Staff Sergeant Zane, conducting night inspections, paused at her position longer than others, noting the unusual field craft. "Where'd you learn this technique?" he asked quietly. "Survival school, plus some adaptations," she replied, not elaborating further. By the end of the first week, the candidate pool had dropped from 58 to 42 as weaker members quit or failed standards. Most had expected Freya to be among them. Yet she remained, never excelling, but steadily meeting requirements. The whispers changed from dismissal to confusion, though the mockery continued. Late one night, Captain Thorne reviewed personnel files by lamplight in his office. When he reached Freya's, his brow furrowed at the unusual number of redacted sections and classified pages. Her service record showed distinguished service in Afghanistan and 3 unnamed locations, but specific details of her deployments were heavily censored. Medical records indicated multiple surgeries at Walter Reed National Military Medical Center, followed by an extensive rehabilitation period, but the nature of her injuries was not fully disclosed. Something about her history didn't align with the struggling candidate he'd been observing. He made a phone call to an old colleague at Special Operations Command. "Jim, it's Thorne. I need clearance on a file. Sergeant Freya Huxworth, currently in my selection course, but her records are blacked out like a CIA holiday calendar." He listened for a moment. "Yes, that's right." Limps noticeably. Another pause. Understood. Just curious what I'm actually working with here. By the end of the second week, the candidate pool had dropped further to 31. The remaining candidates showed the effects of constant physical stress, weight loss, fatigue, minor injuries accumulating. Freya's limp seemed more pronounced, but she maintained the same quiet determination she'd arrived with. At the evening instructor meeting, the cadre reviewed each remaining candidate before the final phase, the dreaded crucible march that would determine who received placement in the operational teams. "Huxworth still hanging in," remarked one instructor with mild surprise. Staff Sergeant Zane nodded. "She's resourceful, better tactically than most give her credit for." "Doesn't matter," Master Sergeant Daxon dismissed. "She won't make the final phase. The crucible will break her. Nature's way of sorting things out."